A feasibility project for YouGov on the impact that the Arab Spring has had on the Middle East and North Africa, ascertaining, firstly, if it's possible for research to be conducted in these Arab Spring affected countries, secondly, if there are potential problems which may inhibit such data collection.
It's important to researchers who may wish to understand whether an event such as the Arab Spring has affected attitudes, cultures and beliefs from traditional discourses in the region. Researchers must be aware of the challenges that they potentially face in data procurement process, such as communication. Is it in fact possible for research to be conducted? Such issues are important because, as Vose maintains, if research hasn't taken place, the job will be harder. An additional roadblock is the potential limitations to data collection. Hereditary class structures and religious backgrounds may distort findings, either through misinterpretation of those dealing with the results, or the poor penetration and subsequent lack of participant representation of data collection methods themselves.
To highlight the ethical issues, as those need consideration when collecting the data. This helps in protecting those who may be condemned for their responses, and also to ensure that appropriate respect is shown for the cultures of the participants. It also allows us to appreciate the practicalities of the actual data collected. This means taking into account the issues of cultural difference, literacy levels, political atmosphere, and wealth. Once we understand the limitations of data collection, we can identify exactly how we must collect it.
As this is a feasibility study, opposed to conducting the actual research, we came to the conclusion that secondary data will be the most effective means of gathering pertinent information. This is because secondary data is an extremely flexible method which has a large transferable potential. The sole use of secondary data is sufficient to the nature of our study, telling us if primary data is required in order to fill gaps where information is absent.
It can be argued that the sole use of secondary data that covers a region containing many individual nation-states does not respect the differences between those countries, and therefore they are treated similarly when they are not. Tessler and Nachtwey state only rarely are studies cross-national and genuinely comparative. It can be fundamentally problematic to compare countries that have inequalities in population and the different ethnic backgrounds. Take the case of Yemen and Mauritania. Yemen has a greatly superior Berber Arab population as opposed to Mauritania's black Moor population, and the Yemen ended up overthrowing their government whilst no change occurred in Mauritania.
In terms of our data collection, there are no problematic or unethical practices. All of our data is secondary and therefore absent of ethical concerns. Ethical consideration, however, must be taken when considering whether it is feasible to conduct primary data sourcing in the Middle East and North Africa. The region still has potential dangers, and any researcher who would be collecting primary data there would have to think carefully about safety precautions for both themselves and for those whom they are collecting the data from around them.
The issues we found were split into three main subcategories. Politically, tackling barriers such as gaining access to a country, censorship, and ensuring safety once in any of the countries with continued conflict. Logistically, gaining credible data, using effective and ethical data collection methods, sidestepping issues on extremely low, diverse, and unequal literacy levels across the demographic, and uniformly low response rates to postal surveys. Socially, working around cultural traditions on the participation of women, maintaining a respectful, safe stance in relation to religion, and making sure that the appropriate age restrictions are in place to avoid the unethical taking advantage of children.
Local researchers are required in order to overcome barriers of language and culture. Investing time into the training of these local researchers to ensure the standard of data collection is consistent. Initially, the information gathered needs to be simple demographic data to generate experience for the newly trained researchers and to work through any unforeseen problems. This will require bare P